Okay, so yeah, this is going to be the first Shillers Report. We're going to basically talk about the importance of personas and how these are kind of the bedrock for what we call the go-to-market strategy. And what I'll be doing is kind of going through different bits and bobs regarding, you know, where we stand in regards to marketing. So very quickly, I'll give a definition of what the go-to-market strategy is. So it's basically an action plan that specifies how an organization will reach target customers and achieve a competitive advantage. Like, the main purpose of a go-to-market strategy is to provide a blueprint for delivering a product or service to the end user and taking into account factors such as pricing and distribution. A go-to-market strategy is somewhat similar to a business plan, although the latter is broader in scope and considers several additional factors like funding. Organizations can use like a go-to-market strategy for a range of events, including launching new products and services, introducing a current product to a new market, or even relaunching a company or brand. So these are really simple structures that we're going to then use to figure out how best to articulate our products to the market. And the first one that we're dealing with in particular is my meta. So what we've started to do is, if you take a look here, we have who pertains to the target audience. And when we think about the target audience, really we're building for the public good and for the commons, which is also ourselves, like the proletariat or the regular people. And when considering who is going to use or be a part of metagame as a community or use my meta, we kind of have to think about its use cases and how it's applicable to each of us as individuals. So it's a great way for us to try and attain the different perspectives that exist within metagame and within the DAO space. So on the Figma here, you'll be able to see here metagame and DAOs, and one of the personas that have been created. So we have my one here that is not me, but we have aspirations, your drives, goals and needs, hesitations and pain points. So for some people this seemed like a bit of a different type of workflow that they're used to, and there is actually massive value here. So we get to kind of delve into the different types of demographics that exist within the DAO space and how they interrelate with each other. So one of my big aspirations is to involve myself in a community, in a system that values meritocracy, because that's something that I don't see a lot of in the regular world. And also I want to kind of support things that are going to support the community, and not just a certain percentage of people based on how much finances they have, and you know, other things such as that. So they're my like altruistic values. The reason why this is super useful is because when we actually drop into the more product focused personas, looking from the top down, what we end up seeing is that there are so many different concerns and so many different reasons for why we might want to interact with a product, and that is what makes this kind of special. So my meta has the potential to be a reputation layer across the DAO space, and people are like, well, what's a reputation layer? A reputation layer just allows you to get or have visibility on each of the individual participants within a community. It can provide value in regards to how that person works with people, what their personality type is, and also other metrics which might be very useful when looking for people to work with, or people or communities that you're aligned with, and people that you might want to gravitate towards. At the moment with SourceCred, what you see is it's like a beautiful thing. It works fantastically, but when you say I have 1,000 XP and you're in metagame, or I have 1000 XP and I'm in raid guild, what does that mean? So we need more context for that, and my meta provides context for the value that individual players provide, and that's what makes it interesting. So yesterday we kind of got through a bunch of different conversations and looking at my meta from different perspectives. So one perspective is the DAO summoner, the person who's actually going to create the DAO, and then another perspective is the user, or the general user. And there's been a lot of ideas for why this could be useful, because we could gate certain features within my meta. So we could create an index of tokens pertaining to DAOs, and then LP gate, liquidity provide gate different features within the product, and that way we could supply ourselves with liquidity to fund more public goods in the future. That's the type of thinking. It's about growing the space, not as individuals, but as one big happy DAO family, if you like that corny analogy there. But yeah, I think some of the things that we kind of spoke on just very briefly is the different types of people, and there was a archetype of a person that we like to call the achiever, and the achiever is looking for a very different thing compared to maybe some other types of players or other people that might want to interact with my meta. So we looked at their aspirations, and we'll quickly just pour through this one. So their aspirations is to have an overview of an organization, DAO, cloud city, or community. Their drives, it's a recognition system. They want to use my meta to kind of see people of status, or people that they're interested in following or interacting with, or people that they look up to who they then want to become peers of. Other things such as the ability to see people's NFT collections and media that they produce, so that you get a taste of what they're into and what they like, and you can see how I guess it relates to yourself. Another drive could also be for recruiting team members for availability and their skill sets. So if you're going into a hackathon, having a reputation layer like my meta supplies you with some of the relevant information which you might make some decisions off of in regards to recruiting for a hackathon, or just in general for recruiting for a localized project within your community. Outside of that, we can then go a bit deeper into the goals and needs. So it's the potential to align DAOs via either token swaps or investing, because depending on what features my meta has, we can measure for different varying alignments at the DAO level and look at the inter-DAO relationships, be it in regards to what they're working on in particular, say if it's DeFi or if it's public good and what type of public good that they're working on, or other things such as your interplayer levels. So how quickly does this person work? How good is their work? Also in regards to certain aspects that might be interesting to people, such as suggestions, maybe a suggestions box for players that they can kind of take on board and utilize to level themselves up in their game of life that they're looking to do. So these are all like cool features that could be a part of my meta, and some of them are in the works, which is fantastic. Moving on past that, we have hesitations and pain points, and this is where the money is. And when I talk about value, we're talking like this is where it's at. So this is where we kind of get where we can push our messaging and make sure we're reaching the right types of people, and also just being very aware of people's concerns and reluctances, which may fuel indecision when interacting with a product. So we have things here such as the fear of not being able to catch up to others. So if somebody has a higher level of experience and you're an achiever and you want to be at the top of the tree, that can cause, I guess, some reluctance. There's also potential for an intimidation factor before joining organizations. So looking for ways within my meta we can kind of reduce the intimidation factor. How can we create a less intimidating circumstance? Do we need voice memos on profiles? Do we need a help or support channel in metagame to help people on their my meta journeys? That type of thing. Moving on very swiftly. So for people who are posting bounties or quests on the questing interface, there could be a fear that that particular quest that you've now posted will have a lack of progress, or there'll be a lack of urgency towards that. Is there a way that we can signal these particular aspects within the design's interface to create a more intuitive design or user experience? Other things such as slashing individuals in regards to the data, so that could be bots or people who rage quit out of DAOs and things like that. Maybe they don't want their information in a pertinent place and they kind of want that privacy and visibility reduced, and things such as that. And the reason why it's super important is because we all have our own reluctances and pain points, and we have to kind of consider what they might be before we go ahead and just start building out all of these incredible features that we're thinking of. So this is my persona for my meta, and like one of my drives or aspirations for using it is like finding expressions of creativity but in a better context. I kind of want to know, okay, well, you've got a high level of experience, but what is it that you do? What have you worked on? Could that person potentially help me in the future with a project I have, or could that person be great to work with? I like to also know where I'm at with my particular skill set and would like to be judged on that so that I can figure out how to improve, and also to bypass gatekeepers like you have in traditional organizations. We often see problems with things such as nepotism and, you know, friends helping friends, which is also awesome, but at the same time, when it comes to actually appreciating value in other instances, we're not seeing that as much. So I feel like my meta has the potential to help address some of those problems. And then when I go to the hesitations and pain points, for me also is the too much transparency. Almost with my meta, you have the potential to create what is donned or coined radical transparency. Well, just like anything on the immutable blockchain that is Ethereum, we still want to value privacy, and people should have the right to kind of change the levels of visibility that they have on their own personal profiles, and I think that's awesome. Other people had pain points and hesitations towards the fear of judgment, the fact that people could then go onto their profile and I guess downvote or deregulate, or, you know, reduce the quality of the profile based on the negative scores that they may give to somebody else. Well, we can look to kind of impact those things, but I think that can also be addressed via source credit in regards to the weight that each interaction has. Past that, there could be for some people a fear of Web3 and crypto, and how those potential pitfalls are issues, but what is the upsides of my meta? How can we kind of let people know what those things are so we have no issues in regards to wanting or reluctances to use the product? Past that, we also have like trust in the data. So source credit explained. Trust in data is super important. So if we're all going to use source credit or any other reputation layer which includes data, we need to know that we can trust that and it's reliable and it's a good indication of what value that person provides. So with that in mind, it is super important that we kind of find ourselves in a place where we fill out these personas. And what I've done instead is, instead of having people come into the Figma and try and, you know, fill one of these out, I think for a lot of people Figma is a bit fiddly. Instead, I've created a quick little Google form. Google form, super simple. It's just a persona form. Idea being, you pop in, put your aspirations down, your drives, your needs, answer the questions, your goals, hesitations and pain points, and then some of your demographics. With that information, what we're going to do, we're going to start building out all these beautiful personas that we have here, and we're going to get a more of a consensus about what particular features may be of interest, and also how we can kind of market the product to the right people so that they can see the value in it. I think obviously one of the biggest things with products is products can all be useful, but how we communicate its usefulness is super important. And the great thing about user personas is that it has so much potential to offer that value, offer that usefulness that we need to kind of get people interested. So that's pretty much me done over. And oh, actually no, here is, oh, not Easter egg, but as we're saying here, who the target audience, which is us. One other thing that comes of interest is content strategy. So when we use the personas themselves, we get into a real interesting place where we can start looking at people's hesitations, pain points, goals and needs, and then we can start circulating content around these interesting topics. For certain people, that's things like generational wealth. For some, it's property, it's ownership, it's sovereignty. How can we educate people in these areas, or get the right people involved at Metagame to give talks or workshops to address some of these goals and needs that people have, be it organising a better work-life balance or creating DeFi protocols. We've had a lot of different workshops across the last couple of months, but these types of things are all of like super interest to different types of people, and it would be cool if people would do the personas so that we'd have a really sweet idea on what their real interests are, so we can address them and make sure that they're getting the full value that they want out of the DAO space. I think that's what's really important here, to kind of consider what value is to each individual, and then we can actually address it. So we have to define it, measure what we have, and then we can grow into all of these different aspects. That's kind of how I'm looking to push this go-to-market strategy. We have to deal with who, and the who is us and the many people within the DAOspace community. It'll be fantastic if you could share this with anybody that you know in the DAO space, or anybody who is in DAOs and kind of wants to give their opinion on what they find interesting. I think it's going to be super good information for any DAO. I don't think it's a case of we just need to use this for ourselves. We can extrapolate this and give this to other people as well. And I think it's important as a public good to kind of share what we find, but we have to go through the motions of sharing the content with people that we have relationships with and seeing how it goes from there. Alright, that is me done. Shillers Report number 1 over and out.